So the next thing we need to do is we need to grab the horns off of the bull. And in order to do this, we need to use a selection tool. And I wanted to run through them all really quick. The first set of selection tools that you have in your toolbar are these geometric tools. And we can see that I get a rectangle, an ellipse, and then these that select just a single line. The next set of tools are these freeform tools. We've got the lasso, the polygonal lasso, and the magnetic lasso. And these allow you to basically select freeform shapes. So with the lasso, I just kind of grab this selection. When I let go, it's selected. Control or Command D to deselect that. The polygonal lasso lets me select by playing connect the dots with the cursor. And then to close my selection, you see how when I have the tip of the cursor right where I started, and the icon changes from just being the tool into being the tool with the little circle there, that means it's going to close my selection. I can also double click to close these selections. This is a great tool to use when you need to select a building or a sign or something that's square, but the shot of the camera angle kind of makes it look like a parallelogram. This is the best tool to use for getting rid of those geometric shapes. And then lastly, we have the first of the sort of magical tools, and that's this magnetic lasso. And what I do here is I just get close to the edge and I'm sort of drawing near it. And you can see that Photoshop, look as I go even off the line a little bit. You see how Photoshop is just sort of jumping down to the change between the horn and the background. So this is a really great tool, and you could just trace your way all the way around the horns and it would magically select it. And this used to be the best selection tool to use. I'm going to just double click to close my selection and then deselect this with Control or Command D, because I want to show you the best tool. And that's right here, and it's the quick selection tool. This tool allows you to paint selections. Now another tool that just happens to be in here, the last one to talk about, is this magic wand tool. The magic wand tool selects an area based on color. So if I click here in the horn, you can see I get a little patch of the horn. In order to make it grab a bigger selection, I can change the tolerance. So if I change the tolerance to, let's go from 10 to 50, and I'll deselect and click again, same spot, you see I got a much bigger selection. So the tolerance will just say, how different does the pixel have to be that's next as I stretch out before I stop expanding? So it's a great tool. It's really good for selecting skies, and sometimes you get those images that are perfectly white backgrounds and it's just this isolated object. The best way to select those is to click on the background, which it will select all of the white, and then you just inverse the selection. So that's a great way to work on those images that have that pure white background. But the tool that I want to talk about now, and it's best for this project, is the quick selection tool. This allows you to basically just paint a selection. So I'm just kind of painting around, and as I go, you can see that Photoshop automatically tries to find where the edges of the object is that I'm painting on. And there I just made a little mistake and went too far to the outside. All I need to do is click Alt or Option and then paint over that area. And then I let go and I'm back to the plus sign. So now I'm just going to say, well, I want all of this kind of furry hair here. And I don't need a very good selection around the hair because we're going to just blend it out. But I do want to have some so that I have a good area to blend because it works so well with our lion's mane. It's real similar to this hair here on the bull. So not only does it help me convey a point and talk about something a little bit later about how to make beautiful blends with this, but it also makes it so much easier to blend the colors and the textures together. So once I have a selection, and I see this little area that I want to clean up. So I get my selection pretty good, but it doesn't need to be perfect because what we're going to do is talk about a great new tool to have Photoshop help perfect our edges. And what I really want to focus on here is the horns. The fur I'm not too worried about because I'm going to be sort of blending that out and playing with that. But the horns, I want to have a really good selection. So when you're making selections and trying to pull something out of an image, there's a great tool that you can use, and it's called Refine Edge. It's up here in the Select menu, and you can see right here it says Refine Edge. I click on that, and look at that. It shows me what it's going to look like when it cuts this out of the image. And I can look at the edges of my horns here, and they're a little bit rough. They're a little bit bumpy. I can even click on the magnifying glass here and zoom in a little bit more on my horns. And with the space bar, I can use the hand tool to sort of move that around. But you can see I get this edge is not looking great. So I want to clean this up and make it as perfect as possible. A couple things about this tool that you should know is I can choose the view mode. I can see it on black as well as I can see it on white. Or I can see it on the other layers that I have, which in this case happens to be none, which is why I see that checkerboard. But this is a great way to help isolate the image on a background that gives you a lot of contrast so you can really see well what you're doing. So I'm going to choose on black because it gives me a lot of good contrast. And then I want to just simply play with all of these settings. Now, one thing that I do want to tell you about Photoshop, in the new version especially, is that the Photoshop team has been working to try and make it easier to use, especially when you're getting started. So one great tip now is that when you hold the mouse over a tool, you can see that it pops up and gives me a little hint about what this does. And this says it smooths jagged edges. I just happen to be discussing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just slide that up a little bit and see what happens. Wow, and it really did a great job of smoothing my edge right here. Feathering, you can see that kind of blends it out a little bit. That's the opposite of what I want. For this particular project, I want these horns to be really perfect. So I want to keep my feather down for this particular project. It will make the hair look bad, but I don't care since I have a special trick that I'm going to use to get that hair to blend really great. Contrast, I'm just going to kind of move that up a little bit and see what it does. Oh, and that's really sharpening the edges, really making them very clear. And shifting the edge does exactly what you would think. As I pull it up or down, it either constricts or expands that selection area. So this refine edge dialog box is really amazing. It's in itself, it's really sort of deep and it's its own area of study. But I just want to make sure that I've got a pretty good selection on the horns. It doesn't need to be perfect, but I want it to be pretty good. And right now I'm pretty happy with what I've got. Now I do notice that I have this little section over here where the horn is kind of missing. Let me move that back. And what I want to do is click on this option right here. And this is going to allow me to get the tools back. You can see, look, I can paint it back in a little bit. So I'm just painting that up and look how it automatically cleaned up that edge. So I just want to go check really quick, are there any problems in my selection where I'm missing a big set and I don't see anything? And honestly, I'm not worried about it. I'll clean all this up in the next section. I just wanted to make sure that I got a pretty good selection on my horns. Oh, and that really messed that up. So I'm just going to turn my brush down and paint that back in. And with the settings I have, it's not letting me paint it back in. I'm going to show you a way to solve this problem. So let's go ahead and just click OK, because sometimes this happens. You end up with a selection that isn't right. All I need to do now is just shrink it down, and I could use any of my selection tools. Let's even just use the lasso, for example. And I'm going to hold Shift, which allows me to add to my selection. And I'm just going to paint a little selection around that circle that was cut out, and I got to add that back to my selection. So now my selection's looking pretty good. I can double click on the hand and get it back out to my selection, and this is looking great. So what I want to do at this point is copy this and bring it into my lion. So I'm going to do Control or Command X to cut that out of the image, and then I go to my lion layer and do Control or Command V. I can switch to the Move tool really quick and get them basically in position. Oh, they're facing the wrong way. No problem. We'll talk about that in the next video.